Last week, my best friend texted me, but he's been dead for 3 years. That sentence looks ridiculous even as I write it. Believe me, it felt even worse when I read it on my phone screen at 2:14 in the morning. You know that half-asleep state when the world is fuzzy and your brain hasn't caught up to reality? That's where I was. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, its glow slicing through the darkness of my room. I groaned, reached over, and squinted at the notification. New message from Mark. For a second, I thought I was still dreaming. Mark's name shouldn't have been there. It couldn't have been. He was buried 3 years ago. A car wreck that split his life into before and never again. I was at his funeral. I watched them lower the coffin. I helped carry it. But the message was there, waiting. Hey, you still awake? 3 little words, and my stomach turned inside out. My first instinct wasn't fear, not exactly. It was confusion, disbelief. I thought maybe it was some glitch in my contacts. Maybe his mom had gotten a new phone and kept his number. Or maybe one of my friends was pulling a sick joke, the kind you don't laugh about. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My thumb hovered above the keyboard, but every possible response felt wrong. My heart thudded in my ears, loud enough that it seemed to fill the room. Finally, I did what everyone does when something doesn't make sense. I locked the screen, set the phone down, and told myself to forget it. But I couldn't sleep. The buzz of that notification stuck in my head like a mosquito's whine. I rolled over, checked again. Still there. Same name. Same words. The glow of the message might as well have been carved into the inside of my eyelids. I told myself it wasn't real. I told myself I'd delete the contact, block the number, maybe even change my phone. But a part of me already knew. Once a dead man has your number, you don't just walk away. I didn't reply. Not then. Not that night. But I should have known better than to ignore the dead. Because when the next message came through, it was worse. Much worse. You know that feeling when your phone vibrates and you're sure it's just spam? A delivery notification, some scam about extended warranties, or a political campaign begging for your vote. That's what I thought it was the next day. Nothing unusual. Just life being irritating in the tiny ways it always is. Morning came like it always did. Coffee too bitter, bread slightly burned, news feeds full of things I didn't care about. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through updates I'd never remember, silently judging how obsessed everyone seemed with documenting their lives. Which is ironic, I guess, considering what I'm doing now. Anyway, I tried to convince myself the message from last night was just a glitch, or maybe even a hallucination brought on by lack of sleep. Mark was gone. He wasn't coming back through a phone screen. It was easier to think of it that way. By lunchtime, I was at work, sitting in the break room pretending to laugh at one of my coworkers' stories. Everyone had their phones out, heads bent like parishioners at some digital church. I remember making a joke about it, something like, "We're all going to die with bent necks and blue light fried brains." They laughed. I laughed. For a moment, everything felt normal. And then my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to confirm what my gut already told me. But curiosity is cruel. I slid my thumb across the screen. New message from Mark. I froze. My stomach turned the way it does when you miss a step on the stairs. Nobody else in the room noticed. They were too busy scrolling, thumbs flicking, eyes glazed. The world was normal for them. But for me, the message read, "Remember the night at Lake Ridge? When we swore we'd never tell anyone." I swear my blood went cold. My coworkers were joking about sports and weekend plans, and there I was staring at a message referencing something only Mark and I knew about. Something buried as deep as he was. I must have gone pale because someone asked if I was okay. I forced a smile, muttered something about not feeling great, and excused myself. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and read the message again and again, as if the words might change the 10th time. But they didn't. Lake Ridge. Summer night. 15 years old. The secret. We never told anyone. Not his parents. Not mine. Not our friends. It was supposed to be just between us. And now it was on my screen, like a ghost whispering through static. That was the moment my fragile illusion of normalcy cracked. The first text I could wave off as a cruel prank or a technical error. But this was different. This was Mark reaching from wherever he was, dragging the past back into my present. And the worst part? I hadn't thought about Lake Ridge in years. Not until he reminded me. The phone buzzed again, and my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. Another message. I can still see the water. That was when I realized he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By the third day, I couldn't ignore it anymore. At first, I tried to rationalize. I told myself it had to be spoofing. Some hacker with too much free time cloning old numbers to scare people. Or maybe one of my so-called friends found a way to screw with me, digging up memories they shouldn't have known. But deep down, I knew none of them could have known about Lake Ridge. That night was ours alone, and Mark had taken it to his grave. Still, I clung to denial. I had to. Otherwise, I'd lose my mind. That morning, I was brushing my teeth, staring blankly into the bathroom mirror, when the phone buzzed on the counter. I spat, wiped my mouth, and picked it up. New message from Mark. You missed a spot. Left molar. Same as always. I dropped the phone like it burned me. My reflection stared back, wide-eyed, foam clinging to my lips. I turned, scanned the bathroom. No one was there. Of course no one was there. Yet the message described what I was doing in that exact moment. Something no one could have seen unless they were standing right behind me. My heart hammered. I picked the phone up again, hands shaking so hard the screen blurred. Another buzz. Why don't you smile anymore? I shut the phone off and shoved it in a drawer. I told myself I wouldn't check again. I lied. By noon, curiosity gnawed a hole in my resolve. I turned it back on. The messages flooded in like water through a cracked dam. 12:07 p.m. Blue shirt today? Thought you hated that one. 12:18 p.m. Stop pacing. It won't help. 12:43 p.m. Don't bother calling her. She won't pick up. I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't told anyone I planned to call my sister that afternoon. I hadn't said it aloud. I'd only thought it. That was when I decided to test it. I dialed my best friend, Ryan. When he answered, I tried to sound casual. Hey man, quick question. Are you screwing with me? He laughed. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. Are you sending me these texts? From Mark's number? There was silence, then a sharp exhale. Dude, are you okay? That's messed up. Why would I even? Because you think it's funny. Because you hacked something I don't know. My voice cracked, desperation leaking through. I swear to God, it's not me. I wouldn't joke about Mark. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But paranoia is a cancer. Every time I looked at someone I knew, I wondered if they were lying, if they were in on it. That night, lying in bed with the phone face down beside me, I made myself a promise. If another message came through, I'd block the number for good. The buzz came at 2:31 a.m. My chest clenched. Against every instinct, I flipped the phone over. New message from Mark. Don't you dare block me. We're not finished. I nearly screamed. Instead, I hurled the phone across the room. It landed on the carpet, buzzing again and again, lighting up the shadows like a dying firefly. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Each vibration was a nail in my nerves. Around 4 a.m., I forced myself out of bed, picked up the phone, and, hands trembling, opened the thread one last time. That's when I saw it. The message that still keeps me awake at night. No, I'm not ready to show you that one yet. You'll understand why later. All you need to know is this. After reading it, I blocked the number. My breathing slowed, and for the first time in days, I felt a fragile sliver of control. But the relief didn't last. Because 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. New message, unknown. The text read, "You really thought that would stop me?" By the fourth day, Denial had completely fled. I had no choice but to dig. I started with the obvious, a search for Mark's number. Nothing unusual turned up at first, no active accounts, no trace on social media. Just a ghost of a number, the way it should have been. But obsession makes you desperate, and desperation makes you reckless. I found myself scrolling through forums late into the night, lurking on threads I never imagined visiting. Subreddits about urban legends, forgotten internet phenomena, and hacker communities became my library. I typed Mark's number into search bars, hoping for a glitch, a prankster, anything. Instead, I found warnings. One post stood out. Dead numbers. If you get a text from someone who's gone, don't reply. Ever. They see more than you know. The phrase, dead numbers, kept repeating across threads. Some users spoke casually, as if it were a known annoyance. Others described it with the reverence of a curse. According to these posts, certain phone numbers act as conduits, a way for the dead, or whatever lingers on the other side, to reach the living. I laughed nervously at my own reflection in the monitor. "This is ridiculous," I muttered. But even as I said it, my heart beat like a jackhammer. There were screenshots, anecdotes, even videos. People swore they'd seen their own homes described in real time, their routines cataloged by voices that should not exist. The panic began to creep in as I cross-referenced the stories. Some claimed their dead contacts predicted tragedies, some just watched, relentless and silent. I felt the truth slamming into me. I wasn't the only one. My research became a ritual of its own. I lurked in deep web chat rooms, places with flickering graphics, broken links, and usernames like Gravecaller42 or Ghost Signal. The language was arcane, almost ceremonial. Some described steps to banish the presence. Others cryptically warned that intervention might make things worse. I started cataloging messages I'd received in a journal, timestamps, content, and my emotional response. I wanted cold, factual research. I wanted to rationalize. But the entries read more like a terror diary than data. Every screenshot I captured, every timestamp, seemed to follow a pattern I couldn't yet decipher. Then I found it, a thread dedicated solely to numbers like mine. One post chilled me to the bone. If it knows your name, it's already too late. My fingers froze on the keyboard. I had mentioned my name only in passing. My full name, the one only my closest friends used. And now, reading that line, I realized Mark, or whatever was on the other side, had always known it. He had never forgotten. The forums hinted at a deeper ritualistic aspect. Some users referred to connections that must be maintained, not broken. Others hinted at a hierarchy, where the dead could reach through numbers like fingers brushing against glass, feeling, touching, watching. One particularly grim post described a person who had tried to change their number, only to receive a call on a new line minutes later, the same voice whispering, "I'm still here." I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop researching. Every waking hour I spent scanning posts, tracing IPs, reading stories of people who'd been stalked by numbers they were supposed to block. The boundaries between normal life and this hidden digital nightmare began to blur. I tried telling myself it was all coincidence. Hackers, trolls, weird glitches. But the cold, factual research collided with my panic attacks. Every notification sound, every vibration, made me flinch as if the air itself carried his presence. By the end of the night, I stumbled across a comment that was simple, terrifying in its brevity. Once it has your attention, it won't let go, and you'll find out what it wants when it's ready. I realized then that ignoring it was futile. Blocking it, turning off my phone, changing numbers, none of it would matter if the mythos was real. And deep down, I knew it was. I closed the browser, but the words haunted me. A whisper of a bigger conspiracy lingered at the edge of my mind. I wasn't the only one. Not by a long shot. Somewhere out there, others were receiving messages from numbers that should have been dead, being watched, cataloged, terrified. And in that moment, I understood the cruelest truth. Whatever had Mark's number wasn't just communicating. It was learning, adapting, waiting. I used to think my phone battery dying was the scariest thing that could happen to me. That small, blinking warning felt like an apocalypse in miniature. Minutes slipping away until I was cut off from the world. I was wrong. That was nothing compared to what came next. The messages had escalated. At first, it was little things, predicting mundane actions. Then, details I couldn't ignore. The phone would buzz, and the words would describe exactly what I was about to do, sometimes before I even thought of it. One afternoon, I poured myself a cup of coffee, barely conscious of my own movements. The phone buzzed. New message from Mark. You're spilling coffee on your left sleeve. Careful. I froze mid-pour. Sure enough, a few drops had already landed on my favorite blue shirt. I stared at the screen as my hands trembled, hot coffee dripping onto the countertop. That shouldn't have been possible. Nobody else was there. Nobody could have known. But it didn't stop. Over the next 24 hours, the messages became predictions of escalating terror. They mentioned minor accidents first, spilled drinks, missed bus stops, burnt toast. Then more serious things, someone getting hit by a car on a nearby street, a call from a hospital that didn't exist, phone alerts for events that hadn't occurred. It wasn't just information. It was control. And the more I resisted, the more invasive it became. Screens flickered when I picked up the phone. Notifications appeared before they should. Even mirrors seemed off. Reflections lagged behind me. Subtle distortions that made me question if I was alone or merely delayed in some alternate timeline. I tried to joke about it with friends, a desperate attempt at normalcy. Hey, my phone's psychic now, I said to Ryan. He laughed, but the tension in his eyes betrayed him. Nobody wanted to confront the impossible. Cynicism was safer than belief. At night, the messages took on a darker tone. One came through at exactly 3:13 a.m., time-stamped as if it had waited for the most sinister hour. New message from Mark. Tomorrow, 6:47 p.m. Don't be home alone. I couldn't look away. I stared at the screen until my eyes hurt, heart hammering like a drum in a funeral march. What was supposed to happen? And why did it matter to this presence? The date and time were precise, unervingly exact, but the event itself remained a mystery. Phones were supposed to be tools, conduits of communication and distraction. Instead, mine had become an oracle of dread. I caught myself flinching at every vibration, checking every notification for patterns. Even the simplest tasks, pouring water, locking the door, brushing my teeth, felt scripted, as if the messages were writing my day for me. I began testing it, though I knew I shouldn't. I'd leave my apartment, do something out of routine, and wait. And invariably, the phone would buzz with a description of my actions, sometimes even detailing thoughts I hadn't yet spoken. It was watching, cataloging, feeding. Technology had become a medium for something far older than screens and signals. It was primal, invisible, relentless. A whisper from the dead that slid through circuits and glass. And with each message, I felt it drawing closer to its ultimate purpose. By the fourth day, I realized it wasn't just watching. It was escalating, preparing, guiding. The glitches, the distortions, the predictive texts, they weren't random. They were part of a design, a choreography I couldn't see in full. And for the first time, I understood the terrible inevitability of what was coming. No matter how fast I ran, no matter how much I tried to block it, ignore it, or laugh it off, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The messages were counting down, and I had no idea what the final bell would bring. By the fifth day, I couldn't take it anymore. The constant invasion, the predictive messages, the creeping sense that I was being toyed with, it all became unbearable. Rationality had fled my mind, replaced with a gnawing need for answers. I opened the messaging app, fingers trembling, and stared at the number that should not exist. I had avoided it for so long, but now avoidance felt like surrender. I typed slowly, deliberately, choosing each word as if the wrong phrase could break me. Who is this? What do you want? I hit send. The buzz came almost immediately. My stomach sank. New message from Mark. You know who. You've known all along. I laughed bitterly, though it sounded hollow. That's not funny. I typed back. If this is some sick joke, I swear I'll. I'm not joking. I froze. The casual tone was gone, replaced by a familiarity that felt like a hand gripping my chest. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Do you remember the lake? I hesitated, then typed. Yes, of course. But what does that have to do with? You never told anyone that night. Not your parents. Not your friends. Not even me. The screen went dark for a moment, then lit up again. I stared, horrified, as words poured in. You blamed yourself. You still do. I couldn't breathe. The lake, the night we had been reckless, the accident that had left him trapped, the guilt I had buried deep, it was all there. Words I had never spoken aloud. Thoughts I had hidden even from myself. I never told anyone that. I typed, my hands shaking. I know. The simplicity of the reply was worse than any elaborate threat. It knew me better than I knew myself. Each message dug into memories I had long tried to suppress, forcing me to relive the mistakes, the shame, the pain. You tried to move on, but you can't. I typed back furiously, rationality clashing with dread. This isn't real. None of this is real. You're dead. Dead? That's what you think. But I'm still here. And you'll see me. I could feel my knees weakening. My apartment suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. Rational anger evaporated, leaving raw, unfiltered terror. Why are you doing this? I typed desperately. Because you need to understand. Understand what? I didn't have time to ask before another message appeared. You promised you'd never go back. But you did. That's why I'm here. I remembered. The guilt, the choices, the things I thought I had buried. Every attempt at rationalization shattered under the weight of the messages. I couldn't escape it. The conversation continued, each line more invasive than the last. The lake is still waiting. You hear the water, don't you? I've been with you, even when you thought you were alone. I typed, almost pleading. Please stop. Leave me alone. I can't. Not until you face it. I sank into a chair, phone trembling in my hands, reading and rereading every line. The words weren't just text. They were claws digging into my mind, pulling out every secret I had tried to hide. My thoughts, my memories, my guilt, it was all exposed. And then, suddenly, silence. No buzz. No glow. No vibration. The phone sat in my lap like a dormant predator, and I exhaled shakily, relief and fear warring inside me. I had survived the confrontation. I had faced the impossible and lived, or so I thought. Minutes stretched into hours. The night deepened, heavy and oppressive. I tried to sleep, tried to convince myself it was over. But I knew better. I had seen it, felt it, been touched by it in ways I couldn't explain. Then, at exactly midnight, my phone vibrated again. One message. No sender name. No tone of familiarity. Just the words. We're not done. My chest tightened. I wanted to throw the phone, smash it, run, disappear. But the truth was undeniable. The confrontation had changed nothing. The messages, the presence, the unrelenting gaze of whatever Mark had become, it was still here, waiting, watching. And now, after testing boundaries, it had escalated. I sat in the darkness, staring at the glowing screen, realizing something I hadn't dared admit. I wasn't negotiating with a person. I was conversing with something else entirely. Something that fed on my guilt, my fear, my life. and it had decided that I had reached a point where ignoring it was no longer an option. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours, time became meaningless. All I knew was that the messages would come again, and when they did, I would have no choice but to respond. I wish I hadn't answered that call, but if I didn't, you wouldn't believe me. It was exactly 6:47 p.m., the time the messages had warned me about. I had spent the evening pacing, watching the clock tick down, heart hammering in my chest like a desperate drum. Every vibration, every shadow in the apartment made me flinch. I tried to sit, to breathe, to convince myself that it was impossible, that Mark's number could do nothing more than text. But reality had already proven me wrong. The phone rang. At first, it was ordinary. The ringtone, my default chime, cheerful and mundane, filled the silence. I almost laughed at the absurdity, imagining Mark, or whatever had his number, choosing such a banal sound for something so horrific. But when I looked at the screen, I stopped breathing. Incoming call, Mark. I froze, thumb hovering over the green icon. Rationality screamed, "Don't pick up." Every instinct told me this was a trap. Every horror story I had ever read, every dark legend I had investigated in the forums, flashed in my mind. Yet something, a mix of fear, curiosity, and morbid obligation, drove me to press the screen. The line connected. Silence. At first, just static, faint and crackling. Then a whisper. Low at first, so soft I thought I imagined it. "I see you." I swallowed hard, my voice caught in my throat. I tried to speak, but no sound came. The whisper intensified, layered with other sounds I couldn't place. Footsteps, distant crying, a low, guttural growl that seemed to crawl along the edges of the line. And then I heard him. Not exactly Mark, not as he had been. His voice was distorted, fractured, as if passing through 100 filters at once. But I recognized it. That inflection, that laugh that used to irritate me, that way of dragging vowels until they shivered. "You never answered me before, but now you're listening." The apartment seemed to pulse with the sound. The walls trembled. My phone vibrated violently, screen flickering, and I realized I could hear things that weren't there. The scrape of nails across walls, the whisper of water dripping, a faint echo of my own name being called. I tried to hang up. I slammed my thumb on the red icon. The line disconnected for a split second, only to reconnect immediately. Now the voice was closer, more insistent. "I'm still by the lake. Waiting. Watching. Do you remember?" It wasn't just audio. I could feel it. Pressure on my chest. Heat rising in unnatural patterns. Shadows in corners that I hadn't seen before. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to drop the phone, to run, to hide. "You shouldn't have come back." But you did. Then screams joined the whispers. Human, distorted, overlapping, echoing in a way that made my teeth ache. I dropped the phone to the floor, backing away, hands pressed to my ears. The calls didn't stop. The sound seemed to seep into the room itself, filling every space with terror. I crouched, rocking slightly, trying to make sense of it. And then, amidst the chaos, I heard a single, unmistakable laugh. Mark's laugh. The one I had loved and hated in equal measure during our youth. It was familiar, horrifying, and it carried a weight that no mortal sound should ever carry. "Do you see now?" The words cut through the static. I couldn't respond. I couldn't even scream. My body felt heavy, as if gravity had doubled. The apartment blurred around me. Shadows stretched, morphed into impossible angles, and the line between reality and hallucination vanished. And then silence. I blinked, heart pounding, breath coming in shallow gasps. My phone lay on the carpet, screen black, still warm in my hand. The clock read 6:53 p.m. I was alone. The apartment returned to its mundane state. Normal sounds creeping back. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the faint ticking of the wall clock. I collapsed onto the floor, trembling. My thoughts raced, and for the first time, I considered that this wasn't just about messages. It wasn't just technology. It was something else, something older, deeper, and far more dangerous than I could understand. If your phone rings after midnight tonight, don't answer. I know it sounds cliché, like the usual warnings in horror stories. But believe me, don't. I blacked out soon after, my consciousness folding into darkness. When I came to, the apartment was quiet, everything seemingly normal, and yet nothing felt the same. The line between ordinary life and the nightmare I had experienced had shifted permanently, and I knew that the ordeal was far from over. I woke up to the faint glow of my phone on the nightstand. Morning light filtered through the blinds, but it didn't make me feel safe. My body ached, my mind was raw, and the memory of the midnight call still clung to me like smoke in a closed room. I picked up the phone and froze. My photo gallery had changed. New images appeared, ones I hadn't taken. Strange symbols, geometric patterns carved in sand, scratched into walls, or painted on surfaces I didn't recognize. Some were faintly glowing in the low light of the photos, almost as if the camera had captured something invisible to the naked eye. Even more unsettling, my GPS had pinned locations I'd never visited, coordinates scattered across the city and beyond. I tapped on one, then another, heart thudding so loudly I thought it would wake the dead. They were places I had no reason to go, yet the pins were precise, deliberate. And the gallery wasn't just a record, it was a message. I stared at the symbols, trying to make sense of them, but it was like staring at an alphabet designed for creatures that didn't exist in this world. The threads I had found in the forums, the posts about dead numbers, suddenly made sense in a horrifying way. This wasn't just personal. It wasn't just Mark. There was a network, something vast and hidden, connecting numbers, messages, and the living to a force I couldn't name. The thought alone made me feel tiny, insignificant. My personal terror, my guilt, my trauma, it wasn't unique. Somewhere, out there, other people were waking up to the same symbols, the same warnings, the same impossible messages. Dead numbers weren't just anomalies. They were conduits, part of a pattern I had only glimpsed, a pattern that hinted at a scope I couldn't comprehend. I tried to rationalize again, tried to ground myself in reality. But the GPS pins, the photos, the lingering feeling in the apartment, all screamed otherwise. Isolation had been my refuge before. Now it was a cage. Every noise, every vibration, felt like the network watching me. I scrolled through the gallery once more. One symbol in particular caught my eye, a jagged, almost rune-like shape carved into what looked like a door frame. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't decipher it. But I knew instinctively it meant something, and the knowledge that I didn't fully understand it made my skin crawl. I realized something else too. This wasn't a one-time event. It wasn't a prank or a malfunction. It was ongoing, cyclical. Some unseen force had chosen me, yes, but it would choose others, too. The threads, the forums, the whispers of dead numbers, they weren't isolated. They were everywhere, waiting for attention, reaching for someone new. I didn't know who would be next or when, but I knew the signs, a number that should be dead, messages that shouldn't exist, symbols in places that weren't meant to be seen. And I knew that the world I thought I understood, the one bounded by ordinary life, routines, and technology, was only a thin veil over something far darker. I stared at my phone, my fingers hovering over the gallery, wondering if I should delete everything, if erasing the evidence could save me. But something inside me told me that the knowledge was already in my head. Once you've glimpsed it, you can't unsee it. The messages had stopped for now, but the network still existed. And somewhere, someone else was about to wake up to it. I thought I had finally done it. I deleted the messages, wiped my phone, even removed the SIM card. I smashed the device against the counter, shards of glass scattering across the floor. My hands were trembling, my chest heaving. I told myself it was over. The number, the messages, the presents, they were gone. For a few hours, silence reigned. I tried to convince myself that destroying the phone was enough, that the nightmare had ended. I even laughed a little, bitterly, at how much panic and fear one tiny device could hold. But deep down, I knew better. A week later, I had to borrow a phone from a friend. Mine was gone, a relic of terror in pieces. I didn't expect anything to happen. I thought I was safe. I was wrong. The borrowed phone buzzed almost immediately. My stomach dropped as I saw it. New message from unknown. I stared, unable to move. I knew it wasn't a joke, wasn't a coincidence. The texts were back. Same tone, same familiarity, same impossible knowledge of me and my life. The nightmare had found me again, even through someone else's device. If you're reading this, check your phone. Right now, don't scroll away. Don't assume this is just a story. A number you don't recognize, a message you weren't expecting, it could be starting with you. I can't explain why it happens, or who is chosen next, or what the final purpose is. All I know is that it isn't just a story. It isn't just Mark. It's something bigger, something older, something that uses technology as its vessel to reach us. And the worst part? You never know when it will appear. The network is patient, relentless. You might feel safe. You might tell yourself it's impossible, but it isn't. I don't know if destroying my phone actually delayed it or simply provoked it. All I know is that ignoring it doesn't work. Running doesn't work. Some unseen force watches, waits, and chooses its next target carefully. So, if you get a message from a number you don't recognize, don't open it. Don't reply. Don't even look at it for too long. Because once it has your attention, it doesn't let go. And now, with this story, I've done the unthinkable. I've passed your attention to it. If your phone buzzes tonight, you'll know.